Hello and welcome to Chapter 1, Lesson 5. Today we're going to be talking about rounding to the nearest hundred. So there can be more than one reasonable rounded number. So today we're going to explore that. Let's get started. All right, so let's look at example 1. A hydroplane is an extremely fast motorboat. In California, a record speed was set of 213 miles per hour. Wow. What is the record speed rounded to the nearest 10 and rounded to the nearest 100? Okay, so we're looking at tens and hundreds place, what we're rounding to. So first we're going to be using a number line, which, like I've said before, number lines are great. Great visual tools, but they're not always the easiest to draw or most convenient, right? So here we go. Rounded to the nearest 10. So if we're looking at 213, we're saying, is it closer to 210 or 220? Now, if we used our trick that we did, 213, circle the tens place, looking at the 3. The 3 tells us the 1's going to stay the same. All the numbers or digits to the left always stay the same, and the ones to the right become zeros. 210. And we notice that from our number line too, right? This is much closer than 220. So 210 is the best rounded number to use to the tens place, but sometimes we don't want to go to the tens. Sometimes we want something a little easier than the tens place. So we can round to the hundreds place. So let's look at the hundreds place. So we're saying, is 213 closer to 200 or 300? Well, that's a good visual. It's closer to 200, right? So let me show you how we do that with our place value. So if I take 213, and now we're rounding to the hundreds place. Before we've always been rounding to the tens place. Now we're looking at the hundreds place. So we're going to circle the number, the digit in the hundreds place, and look at the 1. Now that shows me that my circled digit should stay the same, so it's going to stay at 2. And all the digits to the right become zeros. So 200 is what I need to round it to round it to the nearest 100. Okay? All right, so let's look at example 2. Olivia placed some jelly beans in a jar. She rounded that number to the nearest 100. That's a good thing to underline. To win the jar of jelly beans, the estimate needs to be guessed. What was the winning number? So now this is where I think it's kind of confusing. They didn't tell us how many jelly beans are in the jar. So this is the number of jelly beans that are in the jar, and then we have to round this number to the nearest 100. So we're going to circle the number that's in the hundreds place. Look at the digit to the right. That digit's an 8, which tells us we need to add 1. It's kind of hard to see. Let me switch my color here. Add 1. Okay, so 4 plus 1 is 5. Notice the digits to the left stay the same. And everything else becomes a 0. 1,500. So 1,483 rounded to the nearest 100 is 1,500. So the winning number was 1,500. Round to the nearest 100. All right, let's do some of our together practice. So round to the nearest 100. Please make sure you get into the habit of always circling. What am I rounding to? So often kids get into a rut of always doing the same thing, like, oh, it's always 10. And then they don't read it, and then they realize, oh, it's supposed to be 100 or 1,000. Okay, so please make sure you get in the habit of circling what you're rounding to. So I'm going to circle the hundreds place, look at the tens place, and that's a 2, which means our 6 stays the same. And all the digits to the right become a 0, 600. Round this one to the nearest 10 and 100. Okay, so first we'll do 10. Where we'll circle the 6 and look at the 5. If it's 5 or more, we add 1. So it's going to be a 7. The 2 stays the same. And all the digits to the right become a 0. So 270 would be what we round it to if we're rounding it to the nearest 10. Now we have to round to the nearest hundred. So I'll erase this little guy here, and let's round to the nearest hundred. So now I'm going to circle the digit in the hundreds place, and we're going to look at the digit in the tens place. So the tens place is a 6, which means we do need to add 1 to be a 3, and then the other two digits become zeros. So 300 would be what we'd round it to if we were rounding to the nearest hundred. Let's see. Is it possible for a number to be rounded to the nearest 10 and to the nearest hundred and result in the same number? Yeah, like what about if we had 601? If I round it to the nearest 10, it's going to stay the same. It's going to be 600 to the nearest 10. And what if I do 601 to the nearest hundred? Look at the 0. That's going to round to, not add 1, so it stays the same, 600. So to the tens and to the hundreds, it rounds to the same number. So is it possible? Why, yes. Yes, it is. Okay, so this is the point of the video where you can head out. If you'd like some more problems, you can stick with me and we'll do some. So remember, our big goal today was rounding to the nearest hundred. So if you're heading out, we'll see you later. If you're sticking around, let's get started. So for all of these, we're rounding to the nearest hundred. So if I circle the hundreds digit, underline the number to the right, that 8 tells me I need to add 1. So I'm going to be rounding this one to 700. Let's try number 2. Circle the digit in the hundreds place, underline the digit to the right. The 4 is going to stay the same. So that 4 that we're underlining here, that we're looking at to tell us what to do with the hundreds place, tells us keep it the same. And all the digits to the right become 0. Okay, here circle the hundreds. Looking at that one, it's going to stay the same. So we're going to be 300. Circle the 7. The 2 is going to stay the same, 2,000. If we look at the 8, it tells us we need to add 1 to the 7. So it's going to be 2,800. Okay, here we're going to use a number line to round to the nearest hundred. 1,877. So that would go about here. 1,877. And so we notice, is it quicker to jump to 1,900 or 1,800? Be much closer to 1,900, right? All right, let's look at the next one here. We have 1,849. So that's going to go like right here. And notice, if it was 1,850, we'd round up because it's 1,849, it's just a smidge closer to go down to 1,800. So 1,800 is what we're going to round it to. And our next number, 1,829, is going to be right here. And we can notice it's much closer to go down to 1,800. Okay, next one, round to the nearest 10 and nearest hundred. Okay, so nearest tens, circle the tens, look at that 9. 9 says add 1, so this one's gonna, 7 stays the same, 1, and then everything to the right becomes a 0. So we're just gonna have it be 710. And then if I'm going to round it to the nearest hundreds, I'm going to circle the digit in the hundreds, place that 7, underline the 0 because it's the digit to the right. I'm going to notice that 7 is going to stay the same, so I'm going to round it to 700. And 709, we can know that that's much closer to 700 than 800. Okay, next one, round it to the nearest 10. 5 tells us to add 1. So it's going to be 190. And then if I'm looking to round to the nearest hundred, I'm going to circle the digit in the hundreds place, and then I'm going to underline that 8 there. And that 8 tells me to add 1, so I'm going to round it to 200 is the nearest hundred. Problem solving. The table shows how many patients 3 doctors saw last year. Okay, here's our 3 doctors. To the nearest 100, which doctor saw about 2,400 patients? Okay. Well, I think the best thing here, I mean, obviously we can cross off Dr. Santos. He's nowhere near 2,400. He's got 3,000. So let's just cross him off to begin with. So if I have the number 2,493, I'm rounding to the nearest 100. That 9 is going to tell me add 1. So it's going to be a 5. These are going to be a 0. Bring down my 2. This one's going to be 2,500. And if I take my bottom Dr. Cooper, he's 2,353. So I'm going to circle the hundreds, look at the digit to the right. That's going to tell me to add 1. 400. Don't forget your 2,000. And Dr. Cooper does round to 2,400. So which doctor saw about 2,400 patients? Dr. Cooper saw 2,000. Not exactly, so we do need to write the word about. About 2,400 patients. I rounded Dr. Walters to 2,500 and Dr. Santos wasn't even close. Close to 2,400. He was 3,200. He was way off. Okay, let's do a couple more problems here. Group of hikers plans to climb Mount Carmi. They start at 1,270 feet. To the nearest 100, about how many feet will they climb to the peak? Oh, well, look at this. This is not a quick, easy one. Okay. So this is how far, this is the peak. This is the top of the mountain. So if I draw the mountain, the peak, which is the top, is 5,344. These guys are starting at, let's say right here, 1,270. So they're starting here and going to here. So how far do they have to travel is what the question's asking. So to figure that out, what we're going to do is we're going to round each number. Okay, so let's take 5,344 to the nearest 100. It's going to be, so 3 stays the same, all the digits after become a 0, and the digit before stays the same, 5,300. And then if I take the elevation they're at right now, 1,270, circle the 100, look at that 7, it's going to tell me to add 1 to get 1,300. Now, is this a lot easier to subtract than doing all that other subtraction? It really is, isn't it? Because look at it, 0, 0, 0 minus 0, 3 minus 3, 5 minus 1, 4. So about how many feet will they have to climb to the peak, to the nearest 100? We would say about 4,000 feet. Okay. Now, lastly, test practice. Mr. Miles bought a telescope that cost $3,102 and a pair of binoculars that cost $454. To the nearest 100, about how much did they cost together? I guess because they tell us to the nearest 100, we're supposed to know that we're talking. It should say about, though, I think. Okay, so let's take our numbers here. I see we have 3,102. So I'm going to circle the 1. Look at that 0 there. It's not going to make me add 1 to the 1. So I have 3,100 plus, rounding 454 to the nearest 100. That 5 is going to tell me to add 1. So we're going to get to 500. Look how easy this addition problem becomes. 0, 0, 6, 3,600. And look at, always a good sign when our answer's up there. Usually, I guess I should say. Sometimes they put them on there to trick you. But we did a good job on this one, so we should be good to go. Anyways, that's all I have for you today, practicing rounding to the nearest 100 and 10. So I will see you tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Bye.